Hello, and welcome to another Tea with the Druid, Tea with the Druid 374. My name is Philip Carr-Gomm, and Tea with the Druid is brought to you by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. This is a pre-recorded tea. Normally it's live, but this is pre-recorded because at the time this goes out, I will be sitting on a train coming down from Glasgow. So this is pre-recorded, but it gives me the opportunity to invite a very special guest into the studio and for us to talk together. So, Manchán Magan, I am so pleased to see you. Welcome.
Oh, Philip, it's so good to finally get together. It's great to be here.
It's great to be here. And about a month ago, I was doing a tea with a druid, and I was reading Monken's book, Listen to the Land Speak, a beautifully written, beautifully produced book, which the author himself signed at one of the best literary festivals in the world, the Boris Festival, which Stephanie and I have been going to for a number of years. It's such a great festival, and I heard Monken speak, and that's it's great. And Monken, maybe you could just start. What I did in that tea was I read out the whole of the foreword because it was just a great kind of introduction to your work. But of course, not everybody will have seen that episode of Tea with the Druid. And anyway, tell me about the genesis of the book. How did this start? Why did you start writing this book?
So during COVID, I'd written a book called 32 Words for Field, which was exploring the magical and the otherworldly and the sort of the nature influences that are in the Irish language. So all those influences, resonances, insights that are in any ancient language. But obviously I was focusing particularly on the Irish language. And I realized, yes, that was all true. But actually, in terms of the voices of our ancestors, the message that they wanted to communicate going forward, yes, it was encoded within the language, but of course, it's also within the landscape and within the mythology. And that's captured in this key sentence that is in part of the oral tradition. You know, the way that the lore keepers or the druids managed to keep all the knowledge alive. And they said, what is the preserving shrine? In other words, how do we keep the amassed knowledge of our people alive going forward for future generations? And first they said, what is the recorded shrine? It is memory and all that is contained within it. So all of the information is within the stories, but then it asks the question again, what is the preserving shrine? And it says it is nature and all that is preserved within it. So all the knowledge, all the stories, all the lore are in the lore, they're in the mythology, but then that mythology is deep intertwined with nature. It's connected to the landscape, to our environment. So I wanted to write a book, Listen to the Land Speak, that explored that went back and unraveled the encoded information that's in the landscape. So it's basically a journey around Ireland, around the most potent sacred sites, showing how they are connected to mythology, how the wisdom and knowledge that was in the mythology is basically woven into those places. Those places become like acupuncture points. So that was the key idea with Listen to the Land Speak.
That's fantastic, and of course this is something you know the concept of terma teachings in Tibet, this idea that teachings are kind of buried in the ground, and you find it I think amongst the Kogi tribe as well, and sometimes they're actually things are physically buried. I know when Islam came down into India, Buddhists actually buried precious objects in the ground. I mean, for a very practical reason, to preserve them and stop them being stolen, but also or destroyed. But there was a way in which this idea was also conveyed as the concept of teachings being buried in the land, and this interesting interaction between human beings and the land too. That because a particular human being is at a particular place, that particular place then sort of is able to retain the memory of them and their exploits and so on. So did you set off on a journey, a physical journey? Did you travel around Ireland, or did you make various trips to and fro?
Yeah, no, I had been. I mean, I was a travel journalist for, I suppose, 15 years. And then a travel documentary maker around the world before that for another 10 years. So I know Ireland quite deeply. And so it was over the years of just immersing myself in the mythology and then realizing the places I knew were, would unravel another layer of mythology. But of course, there were some places that I hadn't been that really blew my mind open and made me think, I need to write this book now. A place like Lough Gur, just south of Limerick City, and poor old Limerick City, where the entire centre of Ireland gets overlooked. Tourists come to the gorgeous west coast, the Atlantic coast. They come to the cities of Dublin, etc., and Belfast and Cork. But the Midlands and that central area is ignored, and Limerick likewise. But just south of Limerick City is Lough Gur, and it is where the spirit of the goddess Anya is still manifest in the landscape. So there's a Lough Gur itself is fascinating. The name Lough Gur. Gur means incubation. So still today in Irish, I'd say, "Oh, Gur." The hen is sitting on her eggs. She's incubating her eggs. So when you come across a place that's called the Lake of Incubation, your ears prick up. And I went there, talked to local people, and they all have these stories of Anya. And Anya means an Irish word. It means brightness or warmth or luminance. It's basically that sun that was coming from the south, from the equator, warming up the land 10, 11, 12,000 years ago when, the first settlers were arriving. This was the goddess that represented that. Never forgotten, still in the stories and still in the landscape. So as I say, her pregnant belly arises out of the sacred lake. Just down the road is Hnoch Anya, which is the head of Anya. And then a bit further on the border of Cork and Kerry, is Anya, the paps of Danu, or the two breasts of Anya. So basically you have her whole body basically the whole of the province of Munster, of the south of Ireland, is a manifestation of the goddess Anya. And you might think, okay, that's just something, in prehistory. But when you're talking to local people, and those people on the Cork-Kerry border who live under her breast, for them, that is the spiritual, that is where the energy, that is where the creative spark comes from still today. So I wanted to capture that and tell people that there were places in Ireland that still have these potencies, that there were caves in another entirely forgotten county, Roscommon, that was called the cave of the goddess energy, Áin Gat or Áin Gat in Roscommon, to show people that this isn't just in the past. Somehow, this windswept, forgotten, rocky green island has preserved some ideas that were universal, that were found all over the world, but somehow still linger on here in Ireland.
That's right. That's fantastic. And of course, you've traveled around the world a lot, and you've interacted with elders and with spiritual and indigenous traditions around the world. And am I right in saying that part of your kind of motivation was to, it's so wonderful when you encounter people who are living their traditions, that you kind of missed that in Ireland, or you wanted to see more of it in Ireland?
Yeah, it's a thing that's only happened maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, and I wasn't expecting it. But as I went around North America or Australia, talking about talking about the richness and the wealth of this culture that was still to be found in Ireland, elders would come to me, like in Australia, mainly in Western Australia. So Nuar elders and Wadandi elders would say, we have similar stories to you. Or when I went up to Alberta and Edmonton, a powerful thing happened. I met Jerry Saddleback and Joanne Saddleback. And Jerry is one of the great lore keepers of Plains Cree tradition. So at the Peace and Reconciliation, he was one of the main spiritual elders. And he noticed the creation myth of his people that takes 4 months to tell, 4 months, day and night. And I was asking Jerry, how do you remember something like that? And he said, I don't need to remember, he said, because I just go out into the land. I create a camp. And a camp is basically, I've recreated the landscape that my ancestors had when they were first telling these stories. So every line, he says, I can't get wrong because it's in choreography almost with the landscape. Every line, he says, has a movement in direction with a rock or a river or a direction of the wind or the sun. And I realized that must be what our ancestors were talking about when they talked about this idea that the memory is encoded in the land. And that's why I can now go out to any river in Ireland and realize that, it's the first layer. Obviously, the rivers will mostly have, in fact, all 99% of them will have feminine names. In the Irish language, masculine and feminine, they'll have feminine names, but so many of them will be named after a goddess. And then if you ask the older people in the community, or if you consult the old manuscripts, the accounts of our lore that were written down by the monks between the 9th and the 12th century, for some reason, we'll never know why, who are very welcome they did, or very lucky they did. In those stories that are either in the mouths of the people or in the manuscripts, there will be these ideas that the rivers are goddesses. And as I say, a lot of the rivers, even you can't avoid it, because like the Ban River or the Bandan River, they're just named after Ban Dia, the goddess, or the great two sacred rivers of Ireland, the Boyne in Ireland, the Boinda, named after this milk-giving sacred cow goddess, or the Shannon River on the west coast of Ireland, named after Shunna, a young spirit, a young supernatural being who decides to seek out enlightenment, to seek out more wisdom. And all of the stories are there. And from a practical point of view, because I'm not a Druid and I'm not so deep into the spiritual lore, I just thought those people who are now polluting our rivers, with increasing the nitrates and all, if we can trigger the memory in them for how their ancestors realized that they were goddesses, that they were sacred, it changes entirely the relationship they're going to have. And it wasn't very far back, their grandparents realized that there were these spirit beings in every bush, in every rock, in every tree, in every river. So it's been forgotten only very recently. So it's not hard in Ireland to spark that memory.
Yes, exactly. I remember, wasn't it when was it DeLorean built a factory and he cut a tree down, and the fact that it was a fairy tree became it was big news in Ireland, and people were furious. And
and we're so lucky because still today nobody would cut down a lone whitethorn, a lone fairy tree. Like that idea that the hawthorn is a sacred tree, and you'll even get you'll get the DHL delivery guy reversing up your trackway, thinking, I can't get this van in, you're gonna have to lop a tree off, and you say, well, I will, but it's actually a hawthorn, it's standing on its own, I can't be responsible for that. But they will reverse away from that, they will find a way. So some ideas have remained, thank God.
Have remained. And do you think the diminishing, this is a delicate issue, which is why I'm hesitant here, but do you think the changing status of the church in Ireland over the last, say, 10 years or so has helped to allow this sort of knowledge about the mythology and the way the land can speak? Do you think that the land was a bit muzzled? Do you think this stuff was muzzled because of the influence of the church? And that there's a new era of freedom, as it were, coming.
Yeah, it's such a great point. First, it's interesting. Like, the influence of the church was relatively short. It only happened after the famine. Just like in Africa, in famines or other places, the church in the 19th century, after the 1840s, came in strong and took control of the Irish mindset. I mean, obviously, Christianity has been here since St. Patrick arrived in 437 AD. But with Christianity, we also kept the spirit tradition alive pretty strong, both, in fact, entwined with each other. But from the 19th century on, it was a much more Victorian, a much more dogmatic, a much more controlling church. And as you said, that began to die out in the late 80s, definitely in the 90s, and then, at the beginning of the 21st century, it was very weak. And that, two things began to happen. As you said, it gave people permission to go back to the sacred places that luckily our ancestors kept alive. And a key place would be the sacred wells, the holy wells, like St. Patrick in his writings, and they genuinely are his writings. We're really lucky to have them. He's the whole time saying, it's just breaking his heart having to go around these holy wells where he's finding a group of nature worshippers with a druid or with a lead spirit figure there. And he's trying to banish them and banish what he calls the serpent or the sacred animal that's in the well or in the lake or in the river water too. But luckily, I mean, the beauty about nature, about putting our sacred places in nature, was Christianity couldn't control nature. They couldn't entirely obliterate the wells. And the memories were there. And like in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, it's amazing how this spark has risen, has awoken in people, particularly young women in their late 20s and their early 30s, but everyone, to be wanting to remember, to go out and find where those holy wells were, clear back the bushes, or remember what the ritual was, what the choreography was at those wells. Unfortunately, in most places, there were a few elder people who did remember that, who remembered whether you touched a particular rock or particular stone, or because often associated with the well would be a sacred tree or a sacred rock, what you did, what the words you said were. So it's coming, as you say, I think two things. One, the church has left this vacuum, people are seeking, but also it's this entirely unexplainable rising of the spirit energy that's happening that nobody could really define. I mean, in the 70s, in a comedy series, we used to laugh at it as the age of Aquarius. We used to think that as a joke term, but we realized there was no joking. It clearly is there. This rise of the, again, calling it feminine energy is too simplistic too, but this more intuitive spiritual sense. Nobody is creating that. Nobody is sparking that. That's, I believe, coming from coming from below and above and wherever, and intuitively, lighting up our cells and our minds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's absolutely so. I mean, it's been wonderful to see. I mean, a while back, I handed over the sort of chieftainship of the order. It's something that I had responsibility I had for about 33 years or so. And then I just after 32 years or whatever it was, I just knew I had to hand it over, and I handed it over to Emma Burke, who's in Kilkenny, a lovely lady, and she had a similar background to me, psychologist and psychotherapist and so on. So we thought in the same way, and I'm so glad I did it, because there's something about, not only the feminine, energy through Ema, but also the fact that she's in Ireland. There's something really magical about that, and apposite. Yes, and do you think, here's a question that I guess is pretty relevant to this context we're in now. We're online on a broadcast, lots of people around the world watching it, lots of people in the States watching it now. Do you think people can contact the inspiration and the all sort of potential and benefits of these magical landscapes without physically traveling there?
Yeah, it's such a key issue. And in one way, I feel, who am I to answer that? What would I know? There's two ways I want to answer it. First, we in Ireland used to laugh at the fact that on St. Patrick's Day, Americans used to come back and look for leprechauns and have big old, blow up shamrocks and things. I believe that was something potent. A lot of those, their ancestors left, in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, even earlier, and in the 60s, they had a memory of that older way of being in the land. Their ancestors did, their grandparents did, and they told them that, they passed it on. So for them, because we know in this Skulls collection that was done in the 1930s, this massive folklore collection, that every parish in Ireland actively believed in the fairies and the other world beings at the time. So they brought those with them to the other countries. And when we joined the EU in 72, along with England and with Britain, we sort of forgot those because we became a more affluent country. But in those communities abroad, they remained alive, this idea of the spirit world. So actually, they have a real deep, almost a deeper connection to the ancestral lore than we do sometimes, because we got just gobsmacked by Google and Intel and the big Silicon Valley companies coming to Ireland and us getting rich very quickly in the 1990s. So, I mean, obviously, it's any culture, traditional culture, they're land-based culture, and I presume land is a really powerful thing. But the more I talk to elders, whether it's in Australia, North America, or like I've made documentaries all over the world, all over Africa, China, India, they will find a river and they say, we're bringing you to the river because this is our sacred river, but it's connected to your sacred river. They go to the sea and they tell a sea story because they say, our creation myth comes from the waves and sea, because likewise do yours. This idea of nationalism, this idea of nation out our borders, as we know, is it's a recent phenomenon. We need to realize, isn't it, that we are all waking up to the idea that we're indigenous to planet Earth. And in that sort of mindset, you can find a sacred tree, a rock, anywhere that have those same resonances.
Exactly. And in that way, almost sort of travel by standing, looking at the ocean on the west coast of America. You can sort of connect to the west coast of Ireland I believe, obviously at one level it's an association of the mind, and you can say, well, it's just the imagination. But if you're into this spiritual stuff, then you believe that there's something deeper going on. There's a way in which we are all connected, and we can sort of, but it's a rather interesting, paradoxical kind of movement of the soul, if you like, of being able to connect universally and in a more particular way to your heritage or to the land beneath your feet or to your ancestry or whatever, but also connect to the universal. It's and I think your book is helping this process of people. I'll give it another little shout out here. Listen to the land speak, a journey into the wisdom of what lies beneath us, by Manchán Magan. Have I said that
Exactly.
right?
That's
Yeah,
it. You said it beautifully. Yeah. And
that's great.
just to reiterate that, as you said, we're trying to connect with the spirit beings and our ancestors. They don't care exactly where you are on the planet. You're going beyond the planet. And clearly, if you're aware, open enough, intuitive enough to connect with the spirit of a rock, well, that rock is in touch with every rock in the world. The rock has no problem making that global, that probably interdimensional connection. So it's just our imagination that guilt trips us to say, "Oh, I'm far away from my homeland. I can't connect." That that I just don't think it has merit. I think it's just another hurdle we need to overcome to realize, no, it's all one. It's all one.
That's lovely, and I think the point you made about how because one of the things that strikes somebody like me who I lived in Ireland for a while about 50 years ago, and then coming back in more recent years, the affluence is really remarkable. I mean, you really notice the difference. What's happened in 50 years is extraordinary. So that now for somebody coming from England to Ireland, you feel like you're in a more affluent place than where you've just come from, which is which is really strange. Part of the wisdom of staying in the EU, I think. But Monken, thank you so much. We'll now go into a meditation to kind of take some of these gems that you've given us, some of these thoughts and ideas that we'll drop into a meditation, and do come for tea again. It'd be really, really lovely to have you. And but thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Mavila Buenas, Philip. That was so lovely. It was so lovely having tea with you.
Great. So let's drop into a meditation now. And to do that, you might like to become aware of your surroundings, looking around you, sensing wherever you are seated, and then gently closing your eyes or softening your gaze. And as you do this, you're still aware of being here now, sensing the walls around you, the floor beneath you, the ceiling above you. But even as you do this, your awareness of these starts to change as you become aware of being in a sacred grove, a clearing in the woods, the forest floor beneath you, the trees around you, the sky above. And you see how gathering here are other people, fellow travelers, and perhaps animals too, a real community of life and of being. Sensing the birds in the branches. Everyone's seated in a circle. And then gently closing the inner eyes and just taking in a slow, deep breath. Holding for a moment, and then breathing out fully and deeply. And then doing that again one more time. Letting go to being here on this earth. And feeling the way the earth holds you. How you can just let go to the earth, just allowing the sense of gravity and of weight to be your friend. No need to hold yourself up. You can even lie down if you like on the ground. And you become aware of the earth beneath you now. You sense all the life in the earth. The moisture underground, the creatures, the energies emanating from the stones and the crystals in the earth. And you feel yourself bathed in this energy of the earth that brings with it a sense of stability and calm. And you sense how the trees are rooted in this soil, connected by the community of the mycelium, all connected together with their roots stretching deep into the earth, anchoring them in the earth. And you sense how they're drawing up the moisture from the earth, which travels up the roots and then up the trunks of the trees. And you sense now the community of trees around us all. This community of our brothers and sisters, the trees, these living beings who are our allies and our guardians too. Dear trees, we offer you our love, our respect, our care. And you breathe in the scent of the trees and of the forest. You become aware of the leaves now and the branches of the trees high up into the crown, the sky beyond. And you take in a deep breath now, breathing in the energy of the sky. And as you breathe in and you breathe out, the energy of the sky flows into you, bringing with it a vitality and an energy. And the energy of the sky meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And now, as you breathe in and out in the sacred grove, you might notice how you can detect the scent of the sea. And then, as your sense of hearing becomes sharper, you can hear the sea in the background. It's not that far away from the forest you're seated in. And as you focus on the smell and the sound of the ocean, it's as if in your awareness you can travel there now, finding yourself beside the shore. The waves gently lapping, the smell of the sea stronger, all the raw power and beauty of the sea before you. And if it feels okay for you, you might like to allow the sea to speak to you, to welcome you and to whisper words, to whisper a song. Just connecting you to the seas of all the world. Perhaps connecting you to the shores of Ireland, to that green island set in the sea. And just allowing the spirit of the sea to engage with you, not seeking meaning, not seeking anything necessarily logical, but just seeking that relationship, the energy of the sea flowing into your body, flowing through your soul. And as you sit or lie beside the shore, your spirit is washed and energized, blessed and healed by the gods of the sea, by the spirits of the sea. Nothing you need to do. Just breathing in and breathing out. O mighty sea, wash over me and wash through me, cleansing me, freeing me, helping me to let go of all I need to let go of, bringing me blessings and healing, love, energy and peace. As I breathe in and out at your shore, I thank you for all that you give and all that you have given me. And you sense yourself now just placing the palms of your hand on the moist sand at the edge of the sea, or perhaps on the rocks if it's rocky, or perhaps it's soil, whatever it is, you place your hands on the ground, sensing the moisture of the sea and also the firmness of the ground. May there be a blessing on the seas. May there be a blessing on the land. You bring your hands up to your heart, and may these blessings flow through me too. And as you do this, you just sense your awareness gently returning to being in the sacred grove. You sense your companions around you, the trees around you too, the earth beneath you, the sky above you. May there be peace throughout the world. May there be a blessing on my life, on all lives, and on the land. And again, you bring your hands to your heart. And as you do this, your awareness of your physical body starts to grow stronger as your awareness of being in the sacred grove begins to fade. And as your awareness of the sacred grove begins to fade, you become aware of the walls around you, the floor beneath you, and the ceiling above you. and feeling fully present here and now. When you feel ready, and only when you feel ready, you open your eyes. Thank you for being here for this tea with the Druid. Thank you, Monkan, for all that you've said and all that you've written too. And many blessings, much love to everybody. And I look forward to being with you again next week. Bye.